recorded the moment on his phone, feeling a mix of emotions. William and June had been married for 18 years and had twin daughters who were in high school. They met in college and got married after graduation, but it almost didn't happen. About 2 months before they graduated, they attended a birthday party for a friend. June started dancing with Milan, another friend, and their dancing became increasingly intimate. After a while, William felt uncomfortable and left the party, considering ending their relationship. Just as he was deciding what to do, there was a loud knock at his door. He opened it to find June and Milan standing there. Annoyed, he quickly shut the door and locked it. They knocked and called out, but he didn't hear any sincere apologies, only claims that everything was fine. Growing frustrated, William shouted, "Leave me alone!" before heading to bed, though he found it hard to sleep, even with music playing in his ears. At the time, June and William weren't living together anymore. She had her own dorm room, but often stayed at his place. By morning, he had packed her things neatly into boxes, ready to move them out. Those boxes waited by the door as he prepared to go for a jog. When he opened the door, he found June asleep outside in the hallway. He hesitated for a moment before she woke up suddenly. "You have to leave. I'm going for a jog and we are done," he told her. June stood up, looking a bit unsteady. "I'm sorry for what happened. I shouldn't have embarrassed you. Honestly, this saved me from making a big mistake. Can you imagine if it happened after we were married? Maybe even at our wedding? Will, it got a bit out of hand because of too much wine. I'm sure we'd have wine at our wedding too. Really, nothing else was going to happen. I wasn't going to go further with him." "I believe you, June, but it felt like you two were about to start something that night. Well, you could have stepped in." "Why would I? It was revealing. Showed what I could expect from the marriage. So, I'm out." June was crying. She said, "I love you. Milan got me excited. It was his birthday. If you had stayed, I would have welcomed you back." "We'll never know. What you did was very risky. Someone could have gotten hurt. These boxes have all your things. You can ask Milan for help." "Oh no, Will. Please." Will left the door open, walked past her, and hurried down the stairs. He called back, "Leave your key." June felt heartbroken. She closed Will's door, leaving her things behind. She wasn't ready to give up. As she headed to her dorm room, she tried to figure out why she embarrassed Will in front of everyone. She knew she had always liked Milan. They both felt it. The dancing hadn't been planned, but she had chosen to deepen the moment when she was with him. She wasn't sure what would have happened if Will had stayed. But when Milan told her that Will had left, she ran outside after him. Milan followed, asking, "Will left 20 minutes ago. He probably went home. What are you—" "I need to see him." "What were we doing?" she replied. "Just having fun. It turned into something more. I always wanted that, and so did you. But he's my fiancé and you're his friend." "Yeah, but he got you and I didn't. Let's go to his place and try to sort things out, unless you'd prefer to come with me." "Stop it. We need to go to his place. Maybe you should stay here." "No, we both need to apologize." Milan didn't wait outside Will's apartment for long after the door slammed. He tried once more to convince June to come with him, but when that didn't work, he left. She fell asleep leaning against the wall outside the door. Will took a long walk to clear his mind. When he returned to the apartment, the hallway was empty. That brought a sigh of relief and disappointment. He knew he would have to talk to Milan about what happened. After taking a shower, he sat down to think about what to do next. He called his parents' house and his mom answered, Clara Barton. She almost kept her last name when she married, but her maiden name was Bell. "Hi, Mom. I'm calling off the wedding. June and I are finished," he said. Clara was surprised. "Why? She's a wonderful girl." "Not so wonderful." He told her what happened. "I just don't get it, Will. I know she loves you." "I thought she did too, Mom. But now, I'm not so sure. She knew what she was doing. Will, maybe you should think about this for a bit before making a quick choice." Will agreed to talk more in the morning. Clara discussed the situation with her husband, Bartholomew, also known as Bart or BB. Bart was a psychologist who mainly worked with the local courts to evaluate people who had broken the law. Clara trusted him to look at the situation fairly and not treat June as if she had done something terrible. After Clara shared what had happened, Bart asked, "Was she very drunk?" Will said she had some wine, but that she wasn't really out of control. he believes she knew what she was doing. Bart replied, "Well, she might have been scared about the wedding." "What? They've been planning it for almost a year." "But it seems she wants to back out. Her actions were meant to end the engagement. It looks like it worked." "It can't be that simple. We've seen them together. They care about each other. Her parents divorced. I learned a lot about that, but I think you know more." "I talked to Joanne about it. She mentioned that she had a crush on a man nearby and ended up with him. Bob found out and they divorced." "And how old was June then?" "Let's see. She was around 12. She lived with Joanne, but I believe she also spent time with her dad." "And Joanne ended up marrying that man, right?" "Yes. Carl was the one she got involved with. As you know, they recently separated." "So I think June is afraid of getting married. The guy she danced with is a friend of Will's. She might like him. She's concerned that if she marries Will, she might cheat like her mother did. Her feelings for this guy only show that worry." Clara said, "What can we do, Bart? They should be together." "I'm not so sure about that, dear." "I am sure. Can we help them? What can we do? I suppose we can talk to Will and see if he'll reconsider his choice." The next day, Clara called Will and asked to meet. She and Bart went to pick him up for dinner. They chose a quiet booth at a nice restaurant, and Clara started the chat. "Will, your dad and I think you should wait a bit before deciding about the engagement." "Why?" "She showed her true self." Bart said, "Well, you know about her family, right? Her mother's choice led to a divorce." "So? Like mother, like daughter?" Will was firm. "I think that's what June is worried about. Has she ever shown any interest in Milan before?" "Some. Maybe they've joked around a little." Clara said, "So perhaps she's anxious about being loyal, but Will, I believe she can be loyal." Bart added, "We think her actions might come from confusion about her own engagement and her parents' past. If you both went to counseling, you might be able to repair things." "Why take that risk?" Clara said. "Because you love each other, and everyone makes mistakes. If counseling doesn't help, at least you tried," Will replied. "I'll think about it." June and Will went to counseling. The big wedding plans were called off. There was no guarantee that the marriage would actually happen. After a few months, Will changed his mind. June brought him back to their cozy moments together, and he accepted her apology, understanding that she was confused about her feelings. They had a small wedding after graduation. Only their parents, June's sister, Will's older brother, and a cousin were there. Instead of spending money on a big wedding, they went to the Bahamas for 10 days. They had an amazing trip, which helped Will feel better about some of his doubts concerning June. Will found a job at a new software company after college. The pay was low at first, but he received a share of the company. June earned a better salary working at a real estate firm. Then the twins arrived, Sally and Susan. June took a year off work, with the assurance that she could return to her job later. After that year, Will arranged to work mostly from home, so he took care of most of the childcare. Will turned out to be great at computer programming, and June excelled at organizing her office. Their family thrived. They lived in a big house in a DC suburb where they raised their daughters. They decided to stop at 2 children. Both Will and June were earning good money. They contributed to a shared bank account for family expenses, keeping any extra in separate investment accounts. This was June's idea, and Will agreed without hesitation. He surprised himself with his reaction. When June suggested this plan, he felt a weight lifted off his shoulders. One evening while June was out shopping, he reflected on their situation. Even with 6 years of marriage, he realized he still didn't fully trust June. He traced this back to a past incident. Aside from that, June had shown no signs of being unfaithful, and he believed she hadn't. Still, he felt it was wise to keep their finances separate, just in case. They created a formal agreement stating that if they ever divorced, their individual finances would remain their own. Will sometimes speculated on why June wanted this separation. He decided it didn't matter much. However, he also thought he should occasionally check in on June to ease his worries about loyalty. He trusted her somewhat, but not completely. So he felt it was okay to keep an eye on things. Will was aware that sometimes he contributed to problems in their marriage. He recognized moments when he felt unhappy over small matters. He realized this stemmed from that earlier incident and that old feelings could pop up again. He made a commitment to work on this and was mostly successful. Their marriage continued quietly, without serious issues arising. The random checks kept happening, but they never found anything unusual. As the twins entered their final year of high school, Will noticed that both he and June seemed a bit down. Will was usually the one more involved at home, but June played a big role in family life too. Her work hours often meant that Will took on the main responsibilities. Even though he had those responsibilities, the thought of the upcoming empty nest should have affected him more. He felt a bit sad, but June seemed lost at times. Feeling this way, Will suggested to June that they take a week in Los Angeles. She had to go there for a meeting, and he thought they could explore the city afterward and have a fun time. She was unsure at first, but then agreed. Will arranged for Clara to come and look after the girls. The couple left Sunday morning, arrived in the afternoon, enjoyed a nice dinner at the hotel, and shared a cozy evening together. On Monday morning, June went to her meeting while Will hired someone to show him around LA. He had a great time exploring a city he didn't know well, and then returned to a car rental place because he wanted to see more of the area. Later that day, he got back to the hotel and met June for a snack at the bar. She was sitting with a man named Brad Deal, who had been at her meeting. They introduced each other, and Brad said he had to take care of some business related to the meeting. Will asked June, "Did you know him before?" "No, only from today's meeting. He works for DeWald," she replied. DeWald was a local company that was the reason for her trip. Her boss had made an arrangement with DeWald for mutual referrals, and June had finalized that process. After finishing their drinks, Will and June returned to their room and enjoyed some private time together. Afterward, they showered and went to the hotel restaurant, which had a dance floor nearby. After dinner, they went dancing. However, after just a few dances, they sat down and Brad reappeared, asking June to dance and taking her away. At first, they seemed fine, but they kept dancing without any breaks. June and Brad continued for a long time. Will began to feel uneasy and took out his phone to record what was happening. He thought to himself that June should have known he would not like this. As he watched, he saw June and Brad being overly close with each other. Feeling uncomfortable, he stopped recording and settled the bill. It was late, so he went upstairs to pack his things. He grabbed his duffel bag and a small backpack and got ready to leave. He found his rented car in the hotel garage, put his things inside, and drove east. He drove all night, fueled by a little coffee, and ended up watching the sunrise in Albuquerque. He took a break, enjoyed some coffee, and then continued his journey east. He drove slowly, careful and alert, while thinking about the issues in his marriage. It felt like June was repeating her past actions, but this time, she couldn't chase after him. He wondered if she had gotten close with Brad, but surprisingly he realized he didn't care anymore. This thought shocked him and made him believe the marriage was over. He suspected she had not been truthful when she said she only knew Brad from a meeting, especially since this was her second trip to LA. Will eventually found himself near Oklahoma City and decided to stop. He parked in a quiet area of a Walmart and took a nap. After about 4 hours, he woke up, stretched, jogged a bit, and then went into the store. There, he bought a towel, freshened up in the restroom, and grabbed a pastry along with enough coffee to fill a thermos. He continued on his way without turning on his phone during the drive. Once he felt it was safe, he texted his daughters to let them know he was okay and would be home soon. He shared some pictures from the dancing video to explain his absence. Then, he turned off the phone again. As he drove slowly, he considered his options. He made a few stops along the way, mainly to eat, drink, and take breaks. He parked just south of Roanoke, Virginia, and rested for another 4 hours. After visiting another Walmart to take care of himself, he drove steadily up Route 81 and then east on Route 66, arriving home in the late afternoon. Clara's car was in the driveway when he got home. Inside, Clara was watching TV. When she saw him, she exclaimed, "You're home!" The twins dashed down the stairs and jumped into his arms. He hugged them tightly for a moment before stepping back and noticing their tears. "Oh, Dad! Oh, Dad!" they cried. He smiled and said, "It's me. I'm here." Then he hugged Clara. When he looked up again, he saw June, dressed in her gardening clothes, having come in after hearing all the noise. They both stared at each other, silent for a long time. Clara and the girls grew quiet as well, all having seen pictures and talked to June. so they knew what was going on. June finally spoke, saying, "I'm sorry." Will replied, "Sorry for what exactly?" "For the dancing. I didn't mean to disrespect. That was it. I've been back since the next day." Will nodded, unable to reply. Clara chimed in, "I picked her up from the airport, Will. She took a morning flight to Dulles." Will thanked her, saying, "Thanks, Mom, for watching the kids. I guess you stayed. Why?" "To see if there was anything I could do to help," Clara answered. Will replied, "We can talk later. I need a shower." He headed upstairs. Clara turned to the twins and suggested, "Maybe a walk would be nice." They understood and left the room. When he returned downstairs, Will was clean and freshly shaven. June was in the kitchen, sitting at the table, looking anxious. When she heard him come down, she took a deep breath. Will sat across from her. She said, "I've been thinking about it, and I can't explain what happened." Will asked, "How did the evening end?" "Are you serious?" "The man at the club tapped me on the shoulder during a quiet moment. He asked if I needed the table since my friend had left. I looked around and saw that you were gone." "And? So there was a clear path to that guy's room?" "I asked how long you had been away. He said it had been an hour, maybe longer. I felt alarmed and rushed to our room." "What about that guy?" "He followed me. When I got there, he was right behind. I opened the door and saw that your things were gone. I checked the bathroom, but all your stuff was gone too. And the guy, he was right there. He suggested we should take the moment. He hugged me." "What does that mean? On the dance floor, he did more than that. Be honest, June. Don't lie." June paused. "I was really attracted to him, Will. He kissed me and I kissed him back. But when he tried to go further, I came to my senses. I pushed him away, told him to leave, and he did." "So you spent the night alone?" "I tried to call you. Then I went to the front desk to ask about the room. They told me it was paid for the night, but you had left with your bags. I went to check on the rental, and it was gone too. You were gone. You know, I wondered if you were with him when I drove away. I believe it wouldn't change anything, because you knew that this could hurt us. I don't want us to end. I was caught up in the moment. I'm sorry. I didn't think it through." "There are different ways of thinking, June. On some level, you wanted to hurt me. You should think about that. Before this trip, we weren't doing well. You might want something more than I can give." "No. Maybe just more than we had." For now, I think we need some space. I'll stay in the guest house." "Okay. I was hoping we could still be close no matter where we sleep." "That wouldn't be space. I am tempted, but not right now. Honestly, I'm not sure we can get through this. I think you knew that guy before we came here." June looked down. "Okay. I met him last time I was out there. We flirted, but that was all. That's why you hesitated when I suggested the trip, right? You were planning to see him." She didn't answer. "Well, I was looking forward to seeing him. I never meant for it to go that far." "What does that mean? Just kissing? Touching?" "Don't be sarcastic. I'm not sure. To be honest, I might have stayed with him if you hadn't been there." "Why?" "I don't know. I was just excited. So I'm not enough for you, just like I thought, and your actions made that clear." She was in tears. "Maybe, but I love you, Will." Will just looked at her. She got up and went outside. Clara came down a minute after June left. She had been listening from the top of the stairs. She said, "You need to look past the pain. Think about what you really want." "I want to go back to how things were before this year, but that seems impossible. So now, I just want to be free from all the problems she can cause me." "Oh, Will, she can hurt you because you care about her so much. Anyway, I don't trust her when she says she didn't do anything with that guy after I left. I didn't get any calls from her until the morning." "You need to be sure about that, Will, before you decide to break up. You have the girls to think about." Will decided to hire a private investigator from Los Angeles to check on things at the hotel, talk to the staff, and see what June did before she returned in the morning. He arranged this through a local firm he sometimes used. Then he moved his things to the guest house. June was in the garden. After finishing his task, he went for a run. Clara went outside where June was planting some herbs. She managed to sit down on the grass next to her. Clara asked, "What's really going on, June?" "I'm not sure. Maybe he's right that I want something different, and I used the dancing to make him feel something." "Well, dear, if you don't even know your own reasons, that's not a good start. You really need to think about what you want for your future. This is a big moment for you. Okay. I've been thinking about this since I woke up at the hotel, Clara asked. And, was anyone with you when you woke up? No, nobody was there. June looked away. Not when I woke up. Oh, June. I couldn't help it, Clara. I probably would have made the same choices even if Will hadn't left. Then you weren't honest with him. I think that's it, June. He'll find out. You're in trouble. June said, I had to keep it from him. Please don't tell him, Clara. I should have stayed out of this. This is a mess. Clara was getting frustrated. I messed up, Clara. I made things worse. And then you told me after lying to him, it doesn't make sense. He's my son. Now June was crying. I don't know what's happening to me. I can't see clearly. It feels like I'm in a fog. I'm scared. Clara said, we need to get you some help. Something isn't right here. Just hang in there until I can find someone for you to talk to. Okay, I hope I can. Stay away from Will today, and please don't say anything. I'm going to the bedroom to rest. I'll stay in there. She got up and left, leaving her tools behind. Clara thought she looked like she was in a trance. She put the tools away and went inside to check her phone. She called her friend Bella Grissom, a therapist who might know what to do. Clara walked away from the house to have that conversation. She explained the situation to Bella, including an event from Milan. Bella thought that June might be going through some ups and downs. She said she could see June the next day. Clara set up an appointment for 8 in the morning. For the rest of the day, Will and June stayed apart. The girls helped by keeping their dad busy with college applications. They weren't sure if they wanted to attend the same school, but Will felt confident they would end up at the same place, even if they had to find their own way there. Will had a restless night in the small guest house at the back of the property. It had 2 rooms and everything he needed, but he didn't care about that. He just needed to think, and it was hard to focus. Eventually, he changed his mind about his earlier thought that it didn't matter if she was with someone else. It actually did matter. That realization helped him calm down a bit. The next morning, the girls left for school before June came downstairs. Clara had gone home to talk to Bart. Will had taken the week off. He was enjoying breakfast after his morning run when June finally came down. They exchanged looks again. Will asked, Coffee? Sure, thanks. She took the mug and they both drank it black. June said, I didn't sleep much until it was light out. That's why I'm late. Okay, I didn't really need an explanation for that. Your mom said she'd help me. I'm not thinking clearly. I'm confused. I can relate. I find it hard to believe what you said about not being with him. June gasped softly. Why? Why would I believe that, June? Remember what happened in Milan. You were going to be with that guy. I wouldn't be surprised if you were with this guy, Brad. What difference does it make? You said it didn't matter. Will stood up abruptly and walked to the shower in the guest house. He was now almost sure June had not been faithful. Once he was cleaned up, he called to find a divorce lawyer and made an appointment for the next afternoon. He also looked up Brad Deal, who was 33, lived in L.A., and was married with 2 young kids. Will found out that Brenda Deal was a librarian at a local school. While he was researching them, he got a call from his local investigator, who shared what they had found. They accessed the hotel security footage, revealing that June and Brad had gone to her room around 11:30 p.m. Brad left at 4:22 a.m., and June came out at 6 a.m., packed and ready to go. Will would be able to get copies of those videos. He was impressed with how quickly the LA team worked. The time was 12:30 p.m., 9:30 a.m. on the West Coast. Minutes later, Will received the bill. It was not exactly surprising. There was a line on a form labeled Extra Spending with a total of $2,000. He had a hunch about what the money was for, but then pushed it out of his mind. Will found contact details for Brenda Deal and her husband Brad. He sent Brenda an email letting her know that her husband had been unfaithful with his wife on Monday night in Los Angeles. He attached some photos of them dancing and shared what he learned about what happened afterward. He gave her his number if she wanted to discuss it. After that, he also forgot about it. He needed to think about how to go through the separation and divorce. At the same time, June was struggling to get by. She had cereal for breakfast, got dressed, and Clara picked her up to go see a therapist, Bella Grissom. It was a 30-minute drive. Clara explained that Bella was a psychiatrist, not exactly a family counselor. June liked Bella's office. It had cozy furniture and nice artwork. She was also impressed with Dr. Grissom, who directly asked about June's marriage before the recent incident. Then she brought up a previous situation. She asked June if she noticed any similarities, apart from the dancing. June didn't see any. She understood that the previous situation was about her attraction to a guy and her confusion about her marriage. But for the situation in Los Angeles, she believed she had a solid marriage, even if it had some tension before the trip. Bella suggested that June might have been unfaithful in LA if Will hadn't gone with her. She wanted to know why. June pondered for a moment. She replied, "I'm not sure. Will and I are intimate. It's good. Maybe we've slowed down a bit. But last year in LA, that guy Brad really caught my attention. I managed to resist then, but it was tough. I thought about him a lot. So I reached out to him, letting him know I'd be at the meeting. Why him? There are plenty of guys who would be interested in you. Why him in LA? Probably because he was far away and I thought I could get away with it. It didn't feel risky. But Will came along. That changed your plans, didn't it?" "Yes, except Brad was at the meeting and approached me anyway, right in front of Will. I realized I was getting in too deep when we were dancing, and for some reason, I went along with it." "You wanted a change from your marriage?" "But I don't want that. I think I just wanted to experience something new." "And did you? Experience something new?" "Yes, I know it seems wrong, but it was right there and Will wasn't around, so did it meet your expectations?" "Oh yes, it really did." She had a distant look as she said this. Bella shifted in her chair. She didn't ask for more details, but did question, "Can you remain committed now that you've been with someone else?" "Wow, maybe. Well, no, I think I want more." June suddenly felt sure of that. She thought for a moment that seeing a therapist was helping her understand her feelings. She felt that she was becoming like her mother in some ways. "So, have you spoken to Will? Are you thinking about divorce?" "I love Will. I would prefer to have an open marriage, but I don't think he would agree." "Why not?" "He's pretty set in his ways. I mean, that's how he thinks. But I guess that also means he's not very adventurous, right? Isn't that going to be an issue?" "Yes. You know what I really want? I want to reach out to Milan and see him again if he has changed. I should have done this long ago." "Oh gosh, June. Have you kept in touch with him?" "Not really. I heard he's doing quite well from the alumni magazine." Bella replied, "Well, June, it sounds like you need to have a serious talk with Will. You should tell him you want to explore other relationships if that's what you truly want." "It is. I know I should talk to him." She started to get emotional. The session ended with June in tears. Bella comforted her with a hug and led her out of the office where Clara was waiting. During the drive home, June shared what happened with Bella. Clara was surprised. You mean you're considering seeing other people?" "You put it in a strange way, but yes, that's true. I'm thinking about it some. I won't be obvious about it like I was before. I can be subtle. I'll see if he's okay with that idea, but I doubt it." Clara was quiet for a moment. Then she spoke. "It's sad. What's happening? The kids. I won't be open about it, not while they're home." Clara started to cry, and soon June was crying too. They pulled into the driveway, tears still flowing. They sat in the car until they felt calm enough to go inside. Will was in the kitchen preparing dinner. He had come home early and made a special meal with fish stew, salad, and fresh bread. He wanted to have one nice family dinner together. When the two women entered, Will noticed they seemed upset. He said, "I made a nice meal. We can talk later, but let's eat first. It's still early." June nodded and went upstairs. Clara mentioned she would have dinner with Bart and left. The girls would be back from school at 4. Dinner was served at 6. June and the girls seemed tense at the table. Will smiled at everyone and said, "Let's enjoy this meal together." He noticed them starting to relax, with June being the first. And the meal was indeed delightful. The fish stew was flavorful and hearty. The bread was just right. The salad was fresh and light, and they had strawberries and blueberries for dessert. Gradually, the mood became lighter. Laughter broke out as the girls joked about a classmate named Mark. By the time they finished the fruit, it was 7:30, and the girls asked Will for help with their math homework. June sat in the living room watching her family. The tutoring session lasted until 9, and then the girls headed upstairs. June glanced at Will. She felt unsure after seeing Will with their kids. "Thank you for the evening. You reminded me how much I care for you," she said. "I care for you too, June." "How did your talk with the counselor go?" Will asked, genuinely interested. "It was eye-opening," she replied. "How?" Will pressed. "I realized that I needed, well, I've made some choices that I can't ignore for now." "So, I take it you didn't wait long after I left the hotel?" "Yes, I'm sorry for not being truthful." "But you're not sorry for what you did," Will said, looking at her closely. "No. What do you plan to do? Keep on with that lifestyle?" "Yes, but I can be careful. I hope we can stay together until the kids go to college." "June, I could maybe get over the situation with Brad, but if you're saying you'll keep seeing other men, then there's one person you can't be with." "Will, you could see other women casually, and I believe we can still be together sometimes when we need to." "That's not happening, June. Not now and not ever again. It's sad, and I believe you'll regret it." Tears filled June's eyes. "Maybe I will, probably, but not for a while." Will looked at her and asked, "You already know who you want to be with next, don't you?" "Yes. That new guy at work from the picnic?" "That's right. We got along. He's been really persistent. Now, it's going to happen." Will stared at her. "June, you need to find a place and move out. If you bring someone here, I'll react strongly." "I said I'd be careful, Will. I don't want to move out." "You know what? Your plans are going to backfire." He laughed, but it didn't feel light. June thought he was being unreasonable. She watched as he cleaned up the kitchen. She didn't offer to help Dot. Once he finished, he went straight to the guest house without saying anything. June went to bed but couldn't sleep well and kept tossing and turning Dot. The next morning, she found many missed calls from Brad in LA. His wife had discovered their time together at the hotel thanks to Will. She had evidence, and he was furious. June thought he was foolish. He had approached her right in front of Will. What did he expect? She texted him, expressing her sympathy for his situation while reminding him of the risks he took. Then, she thought about how to go about her plans. The new guy at work, Jerry, seemed like a good start. But she had to think about where they would go and how to explain herself to her daughters. She wasn't sure whether to lie or be honest with them. She wished they didn't have to know her plans. If she went out for a long time, they would definitely wonder. She saved that thought for later. Will took the girls to school, then returned to the guest house. He made coffee and thought about his day ahead. Will had an appointment with his lawyer in the early afternoon. He decided to go for a run and do some weightlifting at the YMCA. He returned home around noon, took a shower, and then drove to the lawyer's office. The lawyer's name was Bertha Billing. It was an interesting name for a lawyer, and he hoped her skills were better than her name suggested. When he arrived, he found that she was a friendly woman around his age. They quickly connected as he shared his situation, and she listened with understanding. She said, "You're not alone in this. Many women our age sometimes make surprising choices." "Really? Is that common?" he asked. "Yes, it's a trend." "What do you want to do?" "I want to separate from her. She has a good job and savings, and so do I. We've kept our finances mostly separate through an agreement. I would like to keep the house and buy her out. The girls can live with me." "Will they want that, or choose her to live with?" "I think they'll choose me. I haven't talked to them about it yet, but I plan to this evening." "All right, let me know. I can have the paperwork ready for you by tomorrow afternoon. We'll cite her choices and the differences between you." "Sounds good," he replied, feeling a lump in his throat as he looked down. Bertha got up and gently patted his shoulder. "I know this is hard. You've been together a long time." "Yes, I thought she cared for me, but it's not the same anymore," he said quietly, wiping away a tear. Bertha gave him a moment before asking, "How shall we inform her?" "At home, I think. Or when I know more, I'll contact you." With that settled, Will drove home feeling downcast. He went directly to the guest house and opened a beer. His daughters returned home around 4:30. He went inside, where June was in the kitchen chopping vegetables. He called the girls in. It may not have been the best idea since June had a knife in hand, but he wasn't thinking about that right then, Dot. They all sat at the table while June stood at the counter. Will took a deep breath and said, "Girls, today I spoke with a lawyer about separating from your mother. She has chosen to be unfaithful, and I cannot accept that." He heard June gasp at his words. Susan, the more thoughtful daughter, asked, "Where will we all live? I don't want to move." June replied, "Will, why did you decide this so quickly?" Will looked at her, puzzled. "Because you told me you would be unfaithful. What did you expect?" He turned back to the twins. "My lawyer mentioned that you can choose whom you'd like to live with. I want to keep the house, and I will." June protested. "It's half mine." "Yes, but I will buy you out," he said firmly. June seemed surprised. Everything was happening so fast. Sally spoke up. "Mom, you know this is because of your choices. This happened because of you, not Dad." June looked distressed. "That's true. I only love him. But I have my own needs, and right now, one person just isn't enough for me," June said. Susan responded. "So you're choosing that over your family? We get it." She turned to Will. "Where's Mom going to live? Not here, right?" Everyone looked at June. She replied, "This is my home too." Will sighed. "You can't bring any other people here or cause any disruptions. I've told you that already. You need to find another place for your choices." June said, "Will, can we talk about this without the girls?" "Not right now. Maybe later. But things are still unsettled." Susan then asked, "Dad, why are you staying in the guest house and not Mom?" They all turned to June again. She didn't say anything and went upstairs. Frustrated, Will shook his head. "Well, that went great." The girls laughed a little, but Will reassured them everything would be okay. He told them they'd all be fine. He then turned back to his task, picking up the knife and chopping the vegetables into tiny pieces. After finishing the salad, he put it in the fridge and noticed June had planned to make burgers. The girls had gone to their rooms to talk things over. Will made some notes on his computer in a file he labeled Separation. Afterward, he set the table, grilled the burgers outside, and prepared the meal. When everything was ready, he rang the dinner bell, wondering who would show up. Within a few minutes, all three of them came down. June's face showed she'd been crying. They ate in silence for a while until Sally broke it. "Mom, is there someone else?" June gave her a sharp look. "That's not something you need to know." Susan chimed in. "We're just curious. We saw someone in LA and he didn't seem like much. What's the story?" Will cut in. "Girls, enough." June sighed. "Look, I know this seems selfish, and it is. I need to do this right now, and your father can't accept that. So..." Sally interrupted again. "So where are you going? Hotels? Where?" Will stepped in. "Please, Sally." Sally was clearly upset. "Okay, but Dad, she's messed up our lives too, not just yours. So what now? Like that song says, no retreat, no surrender." She got up, skipping dessert. Susan stayed behind and said, "Mom, we need to know what life will be like from now on. Whenever you figure it out, let us know. As for me, the less I see of you, the better. You remind me of all the problems we're dealing with. I hope you understand." June put her head in her hands, shaking. Susan left without another word. After a few minutes, June looked up at Will, who was quietly cleaning up. "You're not helping, you know." Will replied, "It's not my job to help anymore, June. Please find another place to live." The next day, June went out to look for apartments. She also stopped by her workplace and made her way to Jerry Blaine's desk. She casually asked, "Do you know of any apartments available?" "Why are you looking for a place?" Jerry asked. He was a nice guy in his mid-20s with curly blonde hair and blue eyes. Many of the women at the office admired him. But as far as June knew, he hadn't been with anyone else. He was, it seemed, trying just for her. "I'm having some problems with my marriage because of my choices," she said with a sweet smile. Though her words hinted at deeper issues. Jerry sighed. "I know a place nearby, right across the street. We could check it out at lunchtime, then I'll help you." "You don't sound very happy." "I'll be happy. So will you." He smiled back at her. They made plans to meet at noon. Jerry felt both excited and let down. He was excited about the idea of being close to the beautiful, married June, but he felt a bit disappointed too. He had been trying to win her over for a while. Now, she seemed to be coming to him for reasons he didn't quite understand. He shrugged to himself, realizing that another person had gotten to her before he could dot. They went to his place first. It was a tidy one-bedroom apartment. As soon as the door closed, June moved toward him with eagerness. She had built up her feelings before this moment. Jerry was taken by surprise when she leaned in close. Not one to back down, he gently pushed her onto the couch, showing her his affection. Then, as they continued to connect, she surprised him once more, wanting to take the lead. She was unlike anyone he had met before. The intensity between them was electric. Somehow, even with all this excitement, he managed to keep his emotions in check, at least for a while. After a brief moment, June rose and smiled down at him. Was it worth it? He smiled back. So far. With a playful spirit, she let go of her dress. Jerry stood, leaving his clothes behind as they took a moment to admire each other, both feeling pleased. June appreciated his fit physique, while Jerry admired her curves. He took her to his bed, and they shared a moment of closeness for a while. After some time, June got up and decided to freshen up. Jerry joined her, and they simply enjoyed the moment of being together without pressure. Later, he made her a sandwich, and they went across the street to look at the empty apartment. It turned out to be just what June needed: one bedroom, parking space, and a lovely view from the balcony. It was partly furnished with a bed and a couch. It was also reasonably priced. She rented it and got the keys. Afterwards, she dropped Jerry back at his office and headed home. Once inside, she started to prepare for her move. Some tears fell as she thought about leaving, but whenever she felt sad, she remembered the joy and excitement of her day. It reminded her of happier times. June thought about everything that had happened and felt frustrated for waiting so long to make changes. She packed her things with fresh motivation. Deciding to leave as soon as she could, she called Jerry at work to ask if she could stay the night. He agreed. She packed a backpack with what she would need for the next day. By then, she heard the twins come home from school. She slowly walked down the stairs, feeling a bit sad. Will was not around. She told the twins, "I'm moving out. I found an apartment near my job. I know that's what you both wanted. And your dad, too." Susan replied, "Yes, we did. Mom, I think you could fix things with the family if you just changed some things." Sally nodded in agreement. June responded, "I don't think that would really work. I still have my own feelings, and your dad would know that." Susan joked lightly, "Is there some kind of medicine for that? Like a magic pill?" But there seemed to be some truth in her words. June shook her head and said, "Remember what Popeye said, 'I am who I am.'" Sally asked, "Will I be like that too, Mom? Like you?" June replied, "You are who you are. When I was your age, I had the same feelings. I tried to push them down because I was in love, but now they are coming out strongly. You both seem to have different traits. Being bold about it isn't all that bad." Sally didn't find that funny and walked away. Susan asked, "What's your new address? Text me." She went upstairs and messaged Will about the move. He replied, "Okay, thanks. I'll manage." Will felt down but did his best to hide it. He went into the house to start dinner. He saw June and asked, "Are you staying for dinner?" "No, I'm going to my new place for the night." Will said, "All right, that makes dinner easier. Can I help carry some of your things?" June felt hurt and annoyed. She grabbed her backpack and walked out the front door. Will felt bad, but thought it was the least he could do to show his feelings. Then he started making a pizza for dinner. Over the next day, June moved her belongings out and got furniture for her apartment. They already had extra dishes, and she bought sheets for the bed. She took some towels but never slept in her old house, always staying at Jerry's place. One thing she noticed was that while her time with Jerry was frequent, it was losing its excitement for both of them. She was confused by this. He was young and attractive, but they didn't seem to connect like she did with Will. On Friday night, they shared a routine moment and then fell asleep. On Saturday, she was ready to fully move into her new home. Jerry helped her with the last of the things, and after making the bed, they enjoyed their time together. She felt joyful about it. But then, he left to visit his family. She spent Saturday night alone and did the same on Sunday night. In the meantime, Will moved back into the house. He and the girls began to follow a new routine without June. Sally and Susan talked in private and decided it was unfair that their mom was dating while their dad wasn't. They discussed it, but weren't sure what to do. Still, the three of them enjoyed their weekend. On Saturday, they went for a long hike in the hills outside of town. They had dinner at an inn and drove home afterward. Will felt distracted, but he pressed on. He had to return to work on Monday, and June would face some consequences there. He thought it served her right. On Monday, Will sent the girls off to school and drove to work. Before leaving, he put his wedding ring in a kitchen drawer. Will sold insurance at a franchise agency where he was part owner. He had started this when the girls went to school. Although he still did some programming at home, the agency provided most of his income and allowed him to be around for the girls. His partner, Gina Baker, had been with him for 10 years. She was the smart one in the partnership, while Will took care of operations. The agency had 5 employees besides them, and Will was the only man in the office. When he arrived on Monday, it took less than an hour for the others to notice his missing ring. During lunch, which Will was eating at his desk, Gina came over. She sat down and asked, "What happened to your ring?" Will was surprised anyone noticed. Gina was a friendly woman in her 30s. She dressed casually and was happily married with 3 kids. He liked her, and they had a good working relationship. He said, "Well, I'm getting divorced. June will be served soon." He forced a grin that felt weak. Gina looked concerned. "What happened? When you left for LA, everything seemed fine." Will shared the whole story, finding it helpful to talk about it. Gina said, "You're going to be distracted, right?" "Maybe, but I'll get through it. Everyone will notice you aren't wearing your ring. They already have, especially Linda." "Linda? The attractive one? No way." "Yes, you'll see. Anyway, we need to think about the business. June might want to share if you divorce." "I spoke to my lawyer about that. He assured me it's not a problem because we have an agreement from when we partnered up. June signed it, and she does well for herself. I think we'll be okay." "Are you sure? This is all happening so quickly. You might need time to adjust. Don't rush into anything." "Gina, what do you mean?" Will asked, confused. "You're a nice-looking guy with a good job. People will notice. I promise you that the 3 single women will be interested, and with Linda it won't be subtle. I'm not sure I'll give them any advice for a while." "Right. Linda, huh?" Will smiled. Linda was a tall woman who usually dressed in a way that turned heads. She was in her late 20s. Will had flirted with her a bit, but nothing serious ever happened. Gina looked at him and said, "Remember what I said, Will?" "Got it." Gina added, "Stay here while I talk to them. I mean, inform them." "Okay." Gina went outside and called a quick meeting. She said, "You've all noticed, I'm sure. He's getting divorced. It happened fast, and he needs time to adjust before making any big decisions. I'm here to ensure he gets that time." Linda asked, "How much time?" Gina fixed her gaze on her. "Just give him some space for now. We can talk again next week." Stella Mason, another single woman who had a nice figure but an ordinary face, said, "We won't be the only ones interested. That woman on the second floor will be after him as soon as she hears." Ella Givens, the 3rd single woman, chimed in, "We can't keep him away from everyone." Gina understood their point. She said, "I'll talk to him. I have already, but I didn't think it through completely." The meeting wrapped up. At lunch, 2 married women, Jane White and Ellen Carson, sat together away from the others. They were good friends, both in their mid-30s with elementary school kids. They lived next to each other. Jane was slim with dark hair, while Ellen was small and curvy with blonde hair. Ellen said, "Jane, you know Gina was really talking to the single women, the ones who might try to get him seriously. She didn't mean us." Jane got her drift. The two had shared experiences with each other and men from their gym, but discreetly. Their husbands knew, and they kept things respectful, so married life remained stable. The 2 women enjoyed their experiences very much, including those with their husbands. Jane asked, "How would we approach it?" Ellen looked at her. "So you do want to go for it, right?" "Oh, yes." Jane nodded excitedly. "He might not be a young gym guy and he's older than us, but I think we'd have a great time." "Me too. How do we make it happen? We could say it's a weekend getaway, just the 2 of us. But how do we ask him? He seems straightforward and might see it as inappropriate. We can plan carefully if he's open to it. Meanwhile, Linda Costello thought about her boss's new situation. She'd flirted with him for 2 years at the agency. At 28, she was single and attractive. She had a couple of steady dates to keep things lively. She wasn't reckless about it, but she did enjoy her regular relationships. Both were single and in their 20s. They didn't want anything serious, just some casual fun, which Linda was happy to offer. From the start, Linda found Will appealing. She thought he was a nice guy and assumed he'd be a good partner. Unfortunately, he was unavailable at that time, but now he was single, and she was curious to get to know him better. One day, they happened to leave work at the same time. Linda quickened her pace to walk beside him. She said, "Hi, I know Gina warned you and us, but I just want you to know that I'm open to something when you are." She smiled playfully as she reached her car, and he held the door for her. He replied, "Linda, I will certainly keep that in mind." He noticed her as she settled driver's seat in her sporty BMW. She caught him looking, and they shared another smile. Will walked away feeling a mix of emotions, but by the time he got home, those feelings began to settle. He realized he had been casually flirting with Linda for a while. He found her a bit intimidating due to her height and athletic build. The next day, he planned to talk to Gina again. He thought Linda might be open to a casual relationship, but she could also want something more. Gina was right that he was not ready for that, but the idea of a little fun was tempting. He felt it was fair to think about himself, especially since his wife seemed to be moving on as well. He had a lot to consider. June, Monday, took a turn for the worst. At 9 o'clock, a man arrived with an envelope. She had an idea of what it contained, but her co-workers were curious too. As she opened it, she cursed the open office layout that made everything so public. Inside was a divorce petition, citing unfaithfulness and claiming that she would continue to meet others. June worked as an administrative assistant in a real estate office. She had been there for many years, was well respected, and was considered quite valuable, even if she didn't sell properties. The firm had 6 agents, including Jerry. Their boss, Glenda McDonald, was 52 and quite successful. She had been married, had raised her children, and was now separated. Short and curvy with reddish-brown hair, Glenda was rumored to be seeing 2 men at that time. When Glenda found out about the papers, she called June into her office. They weren't close friends, but they respected each other. She asked, "So what's happening with you, June?" June replied, "I received a divorce petition. Not really a surprise, just quicker than I expected." Glenda sighed and said, "I see. Sounds like it's tough for you." "Yes," June admitted. Glenda continued, "You went to LA, and I had my suspicions. Jerry was really pushing for you. When I was in LA, I went a bit wild. I danced closely with some guy right in front of Will. After that, Will left and I ended up with that guy. So, not Jerry, right? You know the rule?" "Glenda, when I returned from LA, I spoke to a therapist. During that chat, I decided to explore my options. And well, Jerry was around. You need to let him go, June. I need some control here. If you keep this up, everyone will be acting on their desires, all on my time. We've kept it quiet. But now everyone knows you're getting a divorce. Find someone new." Glenda was firm. "Okay. Anyway, the thrill is gone. I'll tell him tonight." "No, I'll tell him today when he comes back from Fairfax. No more." "Wow, Glenda. You can find another guy. Honestly, you had a good one at first, but I can't judge you. That's true. Can you share one of yours?" "We're not that close. Go to a bar. Now leave." When Will got home from work, he saw a note that the twins were having dinner at a friend's house and studying for tests. He relaxed with a beer and a ham sandwich, thinking about his life. He decided to manage on his own for now, convinced that women could not be trusted completely. Having made up his mind, he watched a basketball game and went to bed. The next day at work, Will received a note from Jane White. It said that she and Ellen Carson wanted to see him, both at the same time, for some casual fun, whenever he wanted, with a day's notice. Will was shocked. Both women were married with kids. What was happening? He thought about Gina, but dismissed the idea. He was sure about that. In the afternoon, he called Gina into his office. "I got a note from Jane. It suggested something casual with her and Ellen." Gina was quiet for a moment and then said, "I'll need to talk to them, but with them, there wouldn't be any pressure for commitment. and both of them together. Will replied, I can't. It feels wrong and it could cause issues at work. Not if no one finds out, but they might. People can't keep things to themselves, and as for their husbands, they won't be a concern. Will said, but office rumors. Tell them to wait. He felt disappointed in himself, but stuck to his decision. Gina replied, got it. Okay. She left, and Will found himself thinking about the idea of being with two women at once. It was something he had never considered, but now it intrigued him. Maybe one day, maybe soon. At home, Will made a special pizza that the girls enjoyed. They brought their friend Lainey over to study, and there was enough for all four of them. No beer for the girls. As he watched another NBA game, he wasn't really paying attention. His mind wandered, wondering if all married women were unfaithful at their core. Or maybe he was thinking about something larger than he had ever imagined. Or perhaps it was just a rare situation. He thought it might be a fascinating topic for a deeper exploration. The game got exciting in the final quarter and went into extra time. Lainey left, and the twins went to bed. Will tried to sleep, but the events of the day kept him awake. He finally figured things out. June lay in her new bed alone for the third night in a row. She and Jerry had been told not to get too close to each other at work, or they could lose their jobs. June didn't want to go out to a bar. It felt too risky for now. She tossed and turned, finding it hard to rest. This separation was tougher than she expected. The next morning, she decided to look for Milan Burton. To her surprise, he was easy to find. He owned a food supply business in Delaware. A little digging revealed that his company made millions each year. She also learned that he was divorced twice. A photo from a year ago showed him looking fit, if a bit bald. At lunchtime, she called his office and eventually spoke to a woman who seemed to be his assistant. June left a message for Milan to call her, just an old college friend reaching out. Milan received the message in the afternoon, and it made him a bit uneasy. Why was June calling him? He hadn't talked to her or Will since that awkward night they had together. He remembered they eventually got married, which felt like a long time ago. He had always found June very attractive, which was part of why he had risked losing Will's friendship. But things hadn't worked out as he hoped. He never fully understood why. Will was a decent guy, average build and smart, but Milan was tall and athletic. Women were often drawn to him. Unfortunately, he had trouble choosing the right ones to be with. Fortunately, he always made sure to have a prenuptial agreement. Otherwise, he might have found himself in a tough spot. He had been faithful to both of his wives, but each had ended their marriages due to infidelity. The first, Joan, stayed with him for 3 years, and Marianne, the second, lasted 5. Since then, he had casual relationships with 2 women. They understood his past and knew he wouldn't be settling down with them, and they were aware of each other too. Milan even enjoyed having both of them over at times. Although managing threesomes was challenging, he found it rewarding. While he traveled, he also enjoyed meeting various women and sometimes pursued married women he met. He felt a thrill in winning over someone who believed they were committed to their spouse. He didn't see this as wrong, given that his own wives had been unfaithful. He believed that any wife might stray if the situation felt right. This helped him feel better about himself. He just didn't question it too deeply. Milan decided to call June after 7. By then, she was at home, in her apartment, alone. Milan said, June, it's Milan. I hope everything's okay. Oh, Milan, I'm so glad you called. You know, I've always wanted to stay in touch. How's Will? Not great. He's divorcing me. It's my fault, really. What do you mean? I got restless and started looking elsewhere. I realized I wanted to keep doing that. It surprised me. So I moved out when he and the girls told me it was time. I'm sorry to hear that, June. I understand what it's like. I've been there before. Why did you call? I wanted to find some closure with you. Closure? What does that mean? That was a long time ago. Do you still have kids? Yes, twins who will graduate in June. I meant closure in that things were left unfinished between us. Milan sighed, feeling both disappointed and curious. Here was another situation where a wife was unfaithful, but she clearly still wanted him. Where do you live? Fairfax. Are you free this weekend? Yes. I have a house by the bay with a nice boat. I'd like to invite you to come out Saturday morning to explore. I'd love to. I'll have Jody give you directions. Maybe come at 10. There might be traffic. He told Jody to make arrangements, including canceling a previous plan for the weekend. Excited June got ready and wrote down the directions to Milan's place. She set out early to cross the Bay Bridge. After driving along the bay, she arrived at his waterfront home around 9. She parked nearby and took a little walk. The view was beautiful. She stopped in a small town for a coffee, then drove into his long driveway where the gate was open. At the end, she parked next to a modern house with lots of glass. As she got out of the car, she saw Milan walking down some concrete steps towards her. He looked slim, tall, and fit, though his hair was thinning. They stood about 10 feet apart, beginning to greet each other silently, taking each other in. You look great, June, Milan said with a smile. And your hair looks good. June laughed. Thanks, Milan, you look good too. He opened his arms for a hug, and she stepped into his embrace, noticing that he felt strong. After a moment, she stepped back and he gestured for her to come inside. We'll have this place to ourselves for a few days. I hope you can cook, he said. Of course. I'm glad we'll be alone. I've thought about you over the years, wondering what might have happened if I had taken a different path. Sometimes I wish I had, but I do have a nice family. They're not too fond of me now. What happened? Milan asked. I've had my own experience, but I always wondered why it ended. It's hard to explain sometimes. Well, Will's not bad. I just wanted something different. I understand. Your situation is quite different from mine. My marriages were shorter compared to yours and Will's. June smiled at him. Maybe I'm just more patient. By the way, when I said I wanted something different, well, you're different. That's an invitation. I thought that's why you called. I'll do my best to impress you. Let's start with getting comfortable. June was a bit surprised by Milan's boldness, but found his confidence exciting. She slipped off her sandals and let her dress fall to the floor. She didn't wear anything underneath. Feeling free, she twirled around for him. He said, Now it's your turn to help me. Without hesitation, she kneeled in front of him. She noticed he was ready too. She carefully unbuckled his belt and opened his pants, surprised to see he wasn't wearing anything underneath. It was an unexpected sight. She couldn't help but feel excited. It was new for her. Looking straight into Milan's eyes, she leaned closer. Taking her time, she experimented with gentleness. She felt thrilled. Milan carefully picked her up and brought her to the couch. Sitting down, he guided her to sit with him. As they got closer, June felt a rush of joy and excitement. She began moving gently, enjoying every moment. He let her take the lead while watching her with admiration. To him, she looked lovely, especially when she was lost in the moment. Milan sensed their time was fleeting. He took control again, lifting her slightly, moving together for a moment before giving in completely to the moment. When they finished, he relaxed back with a sigh. In his younger days, he might have taken her upstairs after that, but things were different now. June smiled, saying, That was wonderful, Milan. So good. He nodded, pleased. He often enjoyed these moments. Throughout his life, he'd met many women. June was just another part of his journey, but there was still some unfinished business with someone named Will that lingered in the background. Milan had a simple plan. If June proved to be a good match, he would enjoy her company for the weekend. After that, he'd keep it casual. She was about his age, and she had moved on from Will, so it wasn't a long-term thing for him. If she didn't meet his expectations, he would gently end things and move on. But she did impress him. She was confident and eager, and they spent an enjoyable weekend together. It was a familiar situation for Milan, but June found it all quite captivating. So, when Milan sat down with her that Sunday evening, she felt a pang of disappointment when he told her their time together wouldn't continue. She asked, Why not? I thought we had a great connection. Yes, he replied. June, that's why you're still here. You're good at it. And, for old time's sake, but I have my life, and you don't really fit into it, so maybe we can do this again later, next year perhaps. We'll see. But not soon, June. Milan didn't plan to see her again. June understood. She felt let down. They had just finished dinner. She said, Well, we at least have tonight, right? Oh, for sure. We'll create some more good memories. And they did. Even Monday morning, Milan and June shared a special moment before they drove off in their separate ways. June emailed him to say thank you, and he replied with a thank you too. That was it for now. When June returned home, she felt sad. She had enjoyed her time with Milan, but her hopes of a lasting connection with him were dashed. She couldn't consider dating someone else from work. What should she do? She went to work, arriving late. Meanwhile, Milan got Will's email address and sent a short message to thank him for allowing June to visit over the weekend. He smiled as he hit send. Will received Milan's email on Monday morning. It annoyed him for a moment. But then he thought about it, and it didn't really bother him. He looked into Milan a bit and replied that he and June were done, and she was on her own. He mentioned that he thought Milan might understand the feeling of being let down by a partner. He smiled as he pressed send. Will and the girls had started to adapt to a new routine since June was now living elsewhere. It had been less than 2 weeks, but the girls adjusted well. Will, however, found it harder. He missed sleeping next to someone. He thought about the many good years he had with June. He was realistic and tried to make the best of things, adjusting his routine to spend more time with his daughters. Life continued for them. Will didn't look for others to fill a void in his life. He felt drained, probably due to mild sadness, which he hid from the girls. After about a month, Gina started to notice that Will seemed off. She walked into his office one Thursday morning. "Will, we need to talk." Will smiled at her words. "What, are we breaking up?" Gina laughed. "You know, Will, if things were different, I would have been all in right after June's decision. No other woman would have stood a chance, but—" Will was taken aback, surprised by Gina's openness. He looked down, trying not to show too much, but Gina knew him well. "This little chat will make our office time more interesting, huh?" She looked straight at him, and Will felt a mix of emotions. Gina said, "But it won't happen as long as Bob is around. Still, you could use some fun in your life, right?" Will replied. "I can handle it." Gina responded, "We both know you're in need of some excitement, Will." "You can't have me," Gina said with a smirk. "But you know, Jane and Ellen could be available both at once." Will shook his head. "They're married." Gina replied, "That doesn't stop them from having their fun. They like to hang out with guys from the gym. They're quite the pair. I think you'd enjoy their company. Maybe it's something you need right now. I could arrange it, no matter what you say." Will shrugged, trying to push the idea out of his mind. "I don't know, Gina. I have the girls to think about." "They're going off to nature camp Saturday morning," Gina said confidently. "You talked to them?" "Yes. They called me because they were worried about you." Will nodded. "I could make some lunch on Saturday," he said, though he felt a mix of emotions he didn't want to acknowledge. Gina smiled, stood up, and left the room. As she passed Jane's desk, she gave her a thumbs up, and Jane smiled back knowingly. By Thursday evening, Will and his daughters were having burgers and slaw for dinner. The girls were excited about their upcoming nature camp trip, a senior field trip for their eco-science class. They'd be gone for a week. During the meal, Susan spoke up. "Dad, we talked to Gina about you." Will looked at her and replied, "I know, that was a bit bold of you both." He glanced at Sally as well. Sally, concerned, said, "We're just worried. You haven't been yourself lately." Will smiled and tried to lighten the mood by singing, "I've got something I can mope about," playfully to the tune of Good Day Sunshine. The girls exchanged looks, but Susan smiled. "Gina said she'd try to help you." Will sighed. "I feel like I'm being nudged in a certain direction." "Maybe you need more than just a little nudge," Sally said, speaking plainly. Will raised an eyebrow. "And maybe I'll handle that myself." Susan added, "Just make sure you do, Dad. We want you to be okay." Will put an end to the conversation. "All right, enough about that." The girls giggled, but Will was left wondering how much Gina had really shared with them. On Saturday, after the girls left on the school bus, Will prepared lunch, tuna sandwiches, ham sandwiches, and a salad. Just as he finished, the doorbell rang. It was Jane and Ellen. He hesitated for a moment before opening the door, knowing what was likely coming. Jane pushed the door open and walked straight in, guiding Will backward until he was up against the wall. She smiled at him and kissed him. The unexpected gesture took him by surprise. He didn't notice Ellen quietly entering behind her, but soon he felt her presence too. "Let's go upstairs," Jane said, her tone light but insistent. "To the room your wife used to sleep in. We're taking over now." Feeling overwhelmed by the situation, Will found himself following along without much thought, unsure of what was happening, but unable to resist the pull of the moment. Afterward, Will was surprised he'd lasted that long. When he turned around, Jane was already prepared, clearly the more assertive of the two women. She pushed him gently onto the bed and took control, their connection undeniable. Will had made sure to be responsible, but everything felt like it was happening in a rush. Soon, Ellen joined in, positioning herself nearby, and they continued. Will instinctively knew how to respond, and within moments, everything fell into a natural rhythm. As they reached the peak of the experience, Will felt the intensity build up. The energy between them was overwhelming, and soon they all collapsed onto the bed, exhausted but content. Jane, lying next to him, smiled and lightly patted him on the arm. "That was just the beginning," she said with a grin. Ellen agreed, laughing softly. They were both at ease, enjoying the moment, and Will found himself surprisingly calm and relaxed despite everything. The hours that followed were filled with more closeness and laughter. The women had a way of keeping the energy going, and Will, though he could have been exhausted, found himself energized. Everything felt new and exciting. For him, it wasn't something to feel guilty about. It was an experience they were all fully part of, with no regrets. By mid-afternoon, they headed downstairs to eat a late lunch. Will, who should have been tired, felt unusually full of life. They shared sandwiches and joked around, feeding each other bites of food in a playful way that made Will laugh. The light-hearted mood continued, with everyone enjoying the moment. "Taste this," one of the women would say, offering a piece of food. There was laughter, jokes, and a sense of ease between them as they ate together. After a while, Jane came up behind Will, wrapping her arms around him from behind, resting her head on his shoulder as they watched Ellen finish her meal. There was a calmness to the moment, but it felt like something more, as if they were all connected in some unspoken way. "We're going to keep you busy all weekend," Jane whispered with a teasing smile. "You might survive it, or you might not, but you'll definitely remember us." She chuckled softly, and Ellen, chewing on a carrot, gave Will a knowing look. For a brief moment, Will felt a flicker of nervousness, but it quickly passed. He was caught up in the experience, knowing the weekend was far from over. Later, they returned upstairs to rest. They had spent the day together, and eventually all three of them drifted off to sleep, peaceful after the eventful day. The next morning, Ellen was the first to wake and decided to take a shower. The sound of the water woke the others, and they soon joined her, grateful for the spacious shower that Will had installed. Afterward, they gathered in the kitchen to make a big breakfast, chatting and laughing as they prepared the meal. As they finished eating, Jane suddenly said, "We need to get ready for church." Will blinked in surprise. "Really?" he asked. Not expecting that at all, Jane just smiled mischievously, giving him a playful look that left him wondering what the rest of the weekend had in store. "Yes, the Church of Endless Joy. Services start now." Up they went. Will ran out of energy in the late afternoon. The women decided to stop. They didn't really want to hurt him. They left for their homes a little after 5. Will made a leftover ham sandwich and watched a baseball game on TV. His mind drifted to the weekend. Maybe the best time of his life. Well, except for when the girls were born. Maybe Dot. Who knew there were such interesting dynamics right in his office? What would his work life be like from now on? Would he really be in charge? Or was he ever? He decided to let things unfold. He went upstairs to sleep at 9. Before getting into bed, he changed the sheets. He put on the ones from Saturday morning. Someone had washed them. In fact, 2 sets were clean. So Will had fresh sheets to sleep on Sunday night. He slept very well Monday morning. Will walked into his office with a bounce in his step. Jane and Ellen just nodded at him. But the lovely Linda looked at him with a hint of disappointment. Someone had gotten to Will first. He closed his door, and Linda looked around the office. Gina smiled at her. Ellen and Jane didn't pay attention. The other women were just arriving. Gina said to Linda, "You need to be patient. If you approach him now, you'll get a chance." but it might only be for a short time. And I know you want more, Linda." Linda nodded, but didn't seem sure. Gina gave Will a few moments and entered his office, closing the door. She stood there, just looking at him. He looked back. Neither gaze was innocent. Gina said, "I see you're in a better mood." "Oh, yes, definitely." Will smiled at her. "But Gina, did you know what they were like?" "A bit. A guy from my gym once told me about them. They connect well. A strong chemistry, at least, that's what he said." Will grinned widely. "I'd say they do." Then he frowned. "I wonder about their husbands." Gina replied, "Their husbands go bowling on Wednesday nights, so I hear." "They come home late by agreement," Will said. "I might just be able to recover by then." He raised his brows playfully and grinned at her. Gina gave him a meaningful look. It was clear she was intrigued by the situation. Then she turned and left, walking past the others to the women's room. Wednesday night arrived and seemed to drag on. Ellen and Jane left around 11. Will found it hard to get out of bed, so he let them go on their own. Will was very cheerful on Thursday morning at work. Linda was irritated again. By this point, she had picked up on the signs around the office and realized the two married women were getting close to the boss. When she understood this, she relaxed. They weren't likely to leave their families. She was still annoyed. She was not the kind of person others judged her to be, and she didn't like the two married women in her office who seemed to have affairs with different people. Linda, who was much prettier, was waiting for Will. She didn't want to be distracted by too much in the meantime. It was frustrating. Gina had a conversation with her. They made a plan. Gina went to Will's office later in the day. She said, "Linda is a lovely woman and beautiful. I think she really likes you." Will looked at her and said, "So?" "She ended things with her last boyfriend. I think you should ask her out for dinner on Friday. Just a meal, maybe some conversation." "Why not more than that?" Will asked. "She's not someone who rushes into things. You might win her over, but..." "You're trying to play matchmaker, Gina?" "She's looking for something serious. She's 28 and very nice. She wants a family one day. She reminds me of how I was at that age." "I see. I do like her. I've joked with her a bit. She's smart, right?" "Absolutely. But before you go on a date, maybe think about your situation first." "All right. So you want me to give this a try with her?" "Yes." Gina didn't look too excited about it. It felt like she was making a sacrifice. Will said, "Isn't it too early? Talk it over with her. Make smart choices. Have you spoken to June?" "No, the divorce is taking its time, depending on how she reacts." "Well, see if you and Linda get along. No need to rush. Think of it like a fun date, just a bit more grown up." After work, Will approached Linda and asked her out for dinner on Friday. She smiled and said yes. Their first date felt like a young romance and went really well. Will took Linda to a nice restaurant. They enjoyed a good meal and shared about their lives. Linda revealed that she had been a star athlete in college, playing basketball for a strong team. She also practiced martial arts and said it helped her feel confident. She mentioned that she didn't bring this up with many guys because it sometimes scared them off. When she mentioned it, she looked straight at Will. He replied, "Maybe someday we can see how skilled you really are." Linda smiled and said, "For us to become serious, we'd need to do that. But I won't hold back. You might be surprised. Have you ever tried any training?" Will smiled. "No, not really." "What does that mean?" she asked. "I wrestled a bit in high school and college, but stopped after that." Linda said, "You're quite fascinating, Will. Do you still work with computers?" "Oh, yes. I do some work from home in my free time. You handle our computer tasks at work. Do you do anything else?" She mentioned that she also worked on computers at home after her martial arts practice. They continued chatting through dessert and beyond. At 11, Will left a generous tip, and they walked outside together. He dropped her off at her apartment building. Before she got out of the car, she gave Will a warm kiss and then gently patted his cheek. She whispered, "This could go really well." After that, she was gone. Will got home and went to sleep. The events of Wednesday were enough for him, at least for a while. On Saturday morning, the school bus dropped the girls off. They had a great time at camp and excitedly shared stories with Will. Then Sally's phone rang and she wandered away. When she returned, she looked at Will and said, "That was Gina. You had a date last night. Will replied, Yes, I did. Susan asked, How was it? I thought it went well. I like her. She works at my office. Linda. Sally smiled. The tall one, right? Yep. She's really nice, Dad. And younger than you. Be careful. He laughed. It's my choice. Anyway, it was just a first date. By the way, have you heard from your mom? Sally said, She called on Thursday and wanted to see us this weekend. Will asked, And what did you decide? Susan replied, We made a plan for Sunday lunch at Tettle's. Oh, okay. I want you both to keep in touch with her, but it's really up to you. I can talk with you about it if you'd like. Sally and Susan met June at Tettle's, a cozy coffee shop and lunch spot close to her apartment. They didn't need to dress up. Susan drove them there. June felt nervous. She knew the twins were upset with her. She wanted to explain things and find a way to make peace since their high school graduation was coming soon. They all sat with lattes and sandwiches. June started, Girls, I want to say that the troubles between your dad and me are my fault. It was something I struggled with. Susan asked, What do you mean, Mom? Did something just suddenly happen? Is that why everything changed? June looked down, feeling regret. I told you that I always had certain needs. It put a lot of stress on your dad and me even before we got married. Has he talked to you about that? Yes, but only a little, Sally said, nodding. I've tried to manage this for a long time. Last year, I almost went too far in Los Angeles. And this year, well, Dad said you were going to see someone until he decided to go to LA with you, right? Sally asked. Yes, it would have stayed a secret. I thought maybe it would be enough. Sally asked, Mom, what do you think will happen now? June sighed. I'm not sure. I hoped that I would be past this. I thought your dad might consider taking me back. Maybe he would. Not unless you change. Even if you do, there's always a chance of falling back. June said, I feel stuck. She smiled slightly. Sally joked, Who's stuck with you now? No one. I had a nice time with an old college friend over the weekend, but he's not around anymore. Susan said, So just stop. How many have there been? 3? Yes, 3, June admitted, her expression distant. Susan remarked, Well, Mom, I think Dad has new possibilities. In fact, we think he had a nice time while we were away at camp, Susan remarked. Linda, I assume, June replied, sounding bitter. No, not Linda, Sally said. But he did go out with her on Friday. We've heard she likes him. She's attractive and available. Maybe you should come back and spend more time with Dad. June shook her head. I don't need help with my relationship with him. We were fine. But you left. Yeah. Even if he wanted me back, I don't know what I'd do. Who was he with last week? I know you know. Sally hesitated. 2 women from his office, we heard. June's face darkened. Jane and Ellen? How could he? Why shouldn't he, Mom? Susan asked gently. June sighed. If we ever got back together, we'd need to clear the air, but honestly, I don't think he wants me back. She paused, noticing how her daughters looked at her. Maybe I should think about things differently, but right now it all feels so uncertain. Sally suggested, You never know. Why don't you try talking to him, see where things stand? June looked at her daughters and saw how much they wanted their parents to reconcile. It made her heart ache, knowing that things had fallen apart. Tears filled her eyes. I'm so sorry, girls, she said, her voice cracking. I'm sorry for putting you through all of this. Whatever happens, you'll both get through it. They sat quietly for a while. Eventually, the conversation turned to more hopeful topics: graduation, college, and the scholarships they had earned because of their hard work. By the time they parted, they were all feeling a little better. Meanwhile, Will and Linda had gone on 2 more dates. After their 3rd evening out, dancing at a club, Linda invited Will into her apartment. Before he knew it, they were spending the night together. Will found himself enjoying his time with Linda. However, she was unexpectedly strong. After their first playful tussle, she managed to flip him off the bed and pin him down on the floor with a laugh. Smiling down at him, Linda asked, Who's in charge now? Will laughed too. Doesn't matter, he joked. We're both winning. They continued to enjoy each other's company, but it was clear that this was just a fun fling for the both of them. When Will got home that Saturday morning, his daughters were waiting for him. Sally teased, I wonder where you've been, Dad. Smirking Dot, Will grinned. I was having a good time, as you all planned with Gina's help. Still, I can't help but feel a bit manipulated here. More than a bit, actually. His tone was serious, and for a moment the girls were caught off guard. Then he broke into laughter, and soon Susan joined in. Even Sally couldn't help but smile, though she tried to stay annoyed. How much more than manipulated? Susan asked, raising an eyebrow. Mind your own business, Will said with a wink. Your well-being is our business, Dad, Susan said, still smiling. The following weekend, Linda had to visit her parents in Connecticut. Sally, sensing an opportunity, called her mom to check in. At that moment, June was busy with her own plans. Spending time with someone she had met at the gym, June had discovered that the gym was a good place to meet new people. When her phone rang, she let it go to voicemail. About 40 minutes later, she listened to the message while Jason, the young man she had been spending time with, was getting ready to leave. The message played aloud. Mom, Linda won't be around this weekend. Susan and I are spending Saturday night at Bella's house, so, call me back. Jason, a handsome and smart guy, raised an eyebrow with curiosity. Is that about you and your husband? He asked, smiling. June smiled back, teasing. Smiled back. None of your business, big guy. She was very attracted to him, though part of her couldn't help but think about the fact that he was only 25. Or maybe that wasn't such a bad thing after all. You still care about him, don't you? Jason asked gently. Yes, June admitted. But for now, I'm just taking things as they come. She gave him a playful pat on the arm. Jason looked thoughtful. But the longer you wait, the harder it'll be to go back, right? June sighed. It might already be too late. There was a sadness in her voice. But you haven't even tried yet, Jason said. Your daughter wants you to make a move, right? Get things back on track? That seems to be the idea, June said. Could you do it? Jason asked, half serious, half teasing. Get him back? June hesitated, but then answered, Maybe, yes, I think I could, though deep down she wasn't as confident as she sounded. Jason smiled at her. You should give it a shot. I know what you're capable of. You're amazing, June. The best. June blushed at his words, feeling a mix of emotions. But as much as she enjoyed Jason's company, she knew that if she truly wanted to try to fix things with Will, she had to focus. The next day, June thought about Jason's advice. Saturday evening, Will was relaxing at home, watching a baseball game. Suddenly, the front door opened, and there was June. Will was surprised. She looked incredible, like she had put in extra effort for this unexpected visit. Her presence was commanding. June stood there for a moment, then stepped inside and closed the door behind her. Will was speechless. I didn't expect you, he said, clearly caught off guard. June moved closer, looking determined. I'm here to talk, she said simply, but the look in her eyes said more. She had been preparing for this all week, staying focused on what she needed to say and do. Will stood up, unsure of what was about to happen, but June made her intentions clear. She had come to make things right, no more games or distractions. There was still a lot to figure out between them, but this was her way of showing that she was willing to try. Will had no resistance left. June gently guided him down onto the carpeted floor, positioning herself above him. She kissed him deeply and held him close, their connection immediate. They moved together and June smiled, feeling the closeness she had missed. It didn't take long for them to both feel a sense of release, the tension between them fading. Afterward, June lay on top of Will, catching her breath. Eventually, she sat up and ran her fingers through his hair. That was really nice, Will. I've missed you, she said softly. I've learned a lot while I've been away. Will, still processing the moment, replied, You certainly have. I'm not sure what to say. Do you still love me, Will? She asked, her voice quieter now. Will hesitated, then said, I'll always care about you, June. I feel the same, she responded. She stayed close, resting beside him, both lost in their thoughts for a moment. After a while, June helped Will up and led him upstairs. Come on, I've got more to show you, she said with a playful smile. That night, they spent time reconnecting. June took the lead, guiding the way, and Will followed. The night was filled with moments where they explored their emotions and re-established the bond they once had. They talked, laughed, and found comfort in each other's presence. By the end of the night, Will had fallen asleep while June stayed awake, reflecting on how things had gone. She felt good about the evening, but she knew the harder conversations were yet to come. The next morning, June got up and started making breakfast. The smell of bacon filled the air, waking Will up. As they sat together eating, June looked across the table and said, "I'd like to move back in, Will. I promise I'll take care of you and make sure you're happy." Will paused for a moment, thinking. He remembered everything that had happened between them. "Are you done with everything that pulled us apart?" he asked carefully. June sighed. "Not completely, but I can keep things private." Will shook his head. "That's not going to work for me." "Is this because of Linda?" June asked. "I like Linda. I'm not sure where it'll go, but she's been honest with me. You haven't." June thought for a moment. "What if we made an agreement? If I see someone, you can do the same." "You're suggesting an open marriage?" "Something like that," June replied. "You've got those two women from work. I've heard about them. Be careful." Will gave a small smile. "Oh, I'll be cautious." "They can't give you what I can," June added. Will looked at her. "June, you're great. But don't underestimate what's been happening on my side either." "But..." June was really angry and lost her focus for a moment. She snapped, "Well, my current boyfriend is better than you. He's the best." "Simply the best? Better than all the rest?" Will teased, smiling. June took a step back. She replied, "No, but he's better than anyone except you." "June, tell me the truth. Where do I fit among your recent choices?" She paused. She had promised not to lie. She said, "I care only for you." "That's avoiding the question." June replied, "Many guys can make me happy. You're one of them. But the experiences I've had since leaving LA have been better than what we had. I assume your experiences have improved since I left." "That's fair. But you're still close to the top. All those other guys have more to offer than me, don't they?" "Yes, So if you were still my real wife, I'd never be enough." "I am your real wife," she shot back. "No, you used to be, but you chose a different path. Your offer to come back still includes those other guys. That's not good enough for me." "Can we still be together sometimes?" she asked with a smile. He shrugged in response. That day, they shared many moments together. Later that evening, as he felt tired, he asked, "If you move back, how often would you need to see other guys?" "So we're negotiating now? How about once a week?" "Would it be like a club membership?" he joked. "Oh, no. The guy I'm seeing now, Jason, from my gym, he may stay around for a bit. 'Cause he's really good." "Yep, no lie, he's great. But there's only him and a couple of others. Jason is single." Will suggested, "Wednesdays for us? You can have your boyfriend." "And what about Linda?" "I think we're nearly done. She's looking for someone serious. That's not me. She's starting to notice, but I'll tell her gently, on weekends." "You drive a tough bargain, but okay for now." "And you'll keep your place for Wednesdays?" "Probably." June was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "You have to promise not to get involved with Gina." Will was taken aback. He knew Gina liked him. He had feelings for her too, but she was off limits. "I promise. She's married." June pointed out, "Things happen, Will. I will hold you to that promise. She's interested in you and you... Well, many married people seek more than just their spouse. I admit I have feelings for her. If she weren't married, it would be different. But she is, and she seems unlikely to stray." "Why? She has wants like everyone. Will, long marriages can become dull. New experiences are exciting. You're new to her. Plus, she cares about you." Will replied, "She wouldn't act on it. I know her." "You knew me once." "Oh, maybe that was a foolish thing to say." "Yep, I heard you went to Milan. How was that?" "He was good, but not like Jason. Anyway, he only wanted that weekend. And that was enough for me too, just for old time's sake." On that Monday at work, Linda went into Will's office and sat down. She said, "Will, this weekend I met up with a guy I knew in high school. We were together again. I'm sorry for that. He's my age and..." "Did he ask anything serious?" "Oh, no. He tried before, but we were too young. Now we are older. He's divorced. So, I want to be honest with both of you. We can't date anymore. At least for a while. I feel bad about it. You don't have to. I enjoyed our time together, but this week, June came back home. I understand. She smiled. She stood up, locked the door, and walked around Will's desk. She leaned in closer. Will felt a rush of emotions as he looked at her. She did something unexpected and then smiled again. She said, "Just a little something to remember me by. You know, while you work." Then she turned and left. Will wondered, as he fixed himself, if all women were the same, except for Gina. He felt sure about her. At lunch, Gina walked into his office and asked, "You and Linda are done?" "She's with an old friend. And June is back home. We made a plan for Wednesdays." "Does it involve the two girls from the office?" "Yes. Is that a problem?" She gave him a daring look. "I want you so badly it feels wrong, and they get to see you. It doesn't seem fair." Will was surprised. "You and me? That wouldn't end well. If we tried, it would just complicate things." "True. That's sad." She walked around his desk and kissed him deeply before leaving. "Just so you know." June moved back in, and the girls were excited. Their plans had worked. They didn't know all the details about the Wednesday arrangements, but the absence of both parents and how they looked when they came home gave them hints. One morning at breakfast, Susan asked, "What's with this Wednesday plan? I can't believe you're both together, so?" June said, "We have an agreement." Sally said, "I see." She turned to Will. "The two girls from the office?" Will nodded. Susan said to June, "And your guy from the gym, right?" June nodded. "The smart one." Sally added, "The really attractive one." June smiled. Sally continued, "Seems a bit risky, though." June replied, "But it's been enjoyable for both of us. I think you might have heard us sometimes. Your dad and I have become closer again. In some ways, things are better than before my change." Sally said, "Oh, we've heard. It's kind of hard to ignore. When we leave for school, are you two going to be all over the house?" June answered, "That had crossed my mind." Will and June took their girls to State College in late August, renting a van for the trip. Their Wednesday plan continued through the summer, even though Jane and Ellen's husband's bowling league was on break during that time. They went to a bar to play darts. Their dart team was the same as their bowling team, 4 men and 4 women. The women were nice-looking and friendly, but all were married. Will knew that Jane and Ellen had special arrangements with their husbands. Both bowling and darts usually ended around 9 p.m., and the husbands typically came home around 2 a.m. Jane and Ellen were often home by then. They didn't want to tire Will out, so they left before midnight, knowing that June was relying on him a lot. Will had accepted that he was in an open marriage, even if he felt unsure about it. Regular medical tests were costly, and he preferred being with just one person, even if it could be a bit boring at times. But that wasn't a choice he had anymore. He had June, Jane, and Ellen in his life. As they drove back from the university, Will talked to June about how he felt. He asked her if she planned to keep seeing other people for much longer. She looked at him and asked, "Do you miss how things were before, even with how great things are now?" "Yes, I do," he admitted. "You could find someone who would stay loyal. Maybe they wouldn't be attractive, but I love you, and I don't want our relationship to end." "Me neither. We have so much time ahead of us. We've shared a lot together, both good and bad." "That's true. Will, my situation with Jason has gotten deeper. He says he loves me." Will paused to think. This was not something he had expected, considering their age difference. "Why did you bring this up? Do you have feelings for him?" he finally asked. "Some. If I were younger, he might be very tempting, but I could never love him like I love you. Lately, we've been going for coffee after the gym. We talk, and he's funny and smart. He does have a girlfriend his age." "Is he serious about her? Why are we discussing this?" "He is serious about her, but he's only with her and has stopped seeing other women. So my question still stands. Why tell me this? I want to spend a week with him at Greenbrier next week. After that, he plans to propose to his girlfriend. Oh, does that mean it'll be over between you two after that?" "Well, if she says yes, and I think she will." "Okay, so after that, will you look for another guy to see on Wednesdays? I'll stay home if you stop seeing other women. We can see how that goes." While June was away at Greenbrier, Will had Ellen and Jane over from Monday to Friday. They stayed the night and left on Friday. By Saturday morning, he was exhausted. When June returned home on Saturday afternoon, she looked well rested. Will helped her with her bags and asked, "How was Greenbrier?" She smiled and replied, "It had a lot to offer. Horseback riding, tennis, pools, fishing. But we barely left the room during our stay." She winked at him. He said, "You didn't really need to share that part, June." "I believe in being honest. It was a week I'll always remember." "Sorry. How were things?" "I'm hanging in there. They really know how to put on a show. This week is one I'll always remember but wouldn't want to repeat." June chuckled. "That's nonsense. Let's go upstairs. You can think about them, and I'll think about Jason." He was intrigued and followed her. About a week after June got back from Greenbrier, Will was working when Gina came into his office that afternoon. "I heard your Wednesday meetings are done. What about June?" she asked. "Also done. We're trying to be exclusive, just to see if it can work out," he replied. Gina smiled and nodded, then left the office. When Will left work that afternoon, she was still at her desk. She noticed him as he walked out and sighed softly. She picked up her phone and called June.